I used to think that if you gave someone your full heart, they'd treasure it. That if you showed up every day with loyalty, kindness, and honesty, they'd see you as irreplaceable. But I was wrong. Not because love is fake or because women are cruel. No, I was wrong because I didn't understand the difference between being loved and being needed. And I didn't know back then that being needed is sometimes the very thing that makes someone lose respect for you. It started on a Thursday, the kind of day that pretends to be normal. I remember putting on my usual blue shirt. She always said it brought out my eyes. I made coffee, packed her lunch, and kissed her on the forehead like I had every morning for the past 7 years. She smiled. That small, distracted kind of smile, I should have noticed it then. By the time I came home, the house felt emptied. Not just quiet, hollow. There was no note, no long goodbye. Just her side of the closet cleared out. In a single unread text on my phone, "I need space, please don't call." I sat on the edge of the bed that night, staring at the spot where she used to sleep. My thoughts looped like static. Had I failed to protect her? Had I not been present enough? Or too present? Was I not strong enough? Not exciting enough? Not enough? Enough. The questions felt like knives twisting in my gut. But beneath the heartbreak, something darker brewed. A quiet shame because deep down I realized I had built my identity around being her safe place, her emotional rock, her soft landing, and now that she was gone, I didn't know who I was anymore. A week later, I found out the truth. It wasn't another man. Not exactly, it was something worse. She'd been talking to someone who understood her in ways I never could, someone who made her feel seen. Only this, someone wasn't a real person. It was an AI-powered relationship app, a voice, a face programmed to say all the right things at the right time, an emotional support illusion wrapped in digital charm. I remember laughing, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. I lost the love of my life to a hallucination. That should have made it easier to move on, right? It didn't, because it wasn't about him. It was about me. She didn't leave me for someone stronger or smarter. She left because I had made myself too available, too predictable, too soft. She left because she needed struggle, tension, mystery, and I had given her stability. Everything I thought made a relationship good turned out to be the reason it died. I went back through old memories, photos, texts, even voicemails, looking for a moment, a shift, a warning. But the truth is, I ignored the signs, the subtle eye rolls when I opened up, the sudden silence after I shared my fears, the way she started looking at me like I was familiar, but not compelling. She never said it out loud, but I could feel it. Her respect was fading and I couldn't stop it. I spent those first weeks hiding my grief behind a routine wake-up shower smile at coworkers. Pretend I was okay, but inside I was collapsing. I remember sitting in a team meeting listening to someone talk about sales metrics, and all I could think was, how do you measure the value of a man who gave everything and still got left behind? No one noticed I was good at keeping the mask on. But at night, the silence screamed. It was during one of those sleepless nights that I stumbled onto a podcast about Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius Epictetus, and unexpectedly, Arthur Schopenhauer. They weren't warm voices. They didn't offer comfort. They offered clarity. Schopenhauer said something that hit me like a slap in the face. The pain you dread may be the very thing that grants you sovereignty. I paused the podcast and just sat there staring at the wall, because for the first time I realized maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe this was the beginning. Not a beginning of revenge or bitterness or becoming cold, but a beginning of understanding. I started to see that I wasn't grieving her. I was grieving the illusion. The illusion that love was a transaction, that if I gave enough, stayed soft enough, she would stay. I hadn't been loving. I had been hoping to be chosen, and that Stoicism taught me is the root of suffering. Attachment to outcomes we don't control. There's a line from Epictetus I wrote down that night and taped to my bathroom mirror. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. For the first time, I asked myself, What if I stopped needing to be loved and started becoming someone I could respect? What if the pain wasn't a punishment, but a path? I don't have all the answers, but I've stopped asking why she left. Instead, I'm asking why I never stood tall in the first place. Why I bent, shrank, and softened in the name of love. When love without self-respect is just disguised desperation. This is where my real journey begins, and I'm done chasing comfort. I'm ready to face the fire. Because maybe, just maybe, what broke me is also what will build me. They say nice guys finish last. I used to laugh at that. Thought it was just something bitter men said after getting rejected one too many times. But after she left, I stopped laughing because suddenly I wasn't just the nice guy. I was the broken one, the left behind one, the one who followed all the rules and still lost. And that's when I realized something no one ever tells you. Being nice isn't the same thing as being strong. Growing up, I was taught to be gentle, to be kind, to listen, and I carried that into every relationship. I didn't raise my voice, I apologized. First, I planned the dates. I remembered the little things. I never wanted her to feel unappreciated or unseen. And for a while, it worked. She'd tell her friends I was so thoughtful, so emotionally in tune. She'd smile at the notes I left on her windshield, the playlists I made for her late night drives. I thought I was winning. But what I didn't see was how with every small act of sweetness, I was chipping away at something much more important. Her respect. That's a hard thing to admit. That sometimes being emotionally available, being open, being safe, it doesn't always build connection. Sometimes it breeds quiet contempt, because what starts as kindness can slip into compliance, and respect, once it starts to fade, never makes a sound. You only hear it when it's gone. It wasn't until I found myself alone that I started unpacking this illusion. One night I was listening to another episode of that Stoic podcast. The guest was a former Marine turned therapist. He said, your job as a man isn't to make her happy, it's to make yourself unshakable. That line stayed with me because deep down I had made her happiness, her peace, her needs, her comfort. I had made them the center of my identity. And when she walked away, I had nothing left. That's when I started reading Marcus Aurelius' Epictetus, Seneca, and unexpectedly, Schopenhauer. Now let me be clear, Schopenhauer isn't easy to digest. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He wrote to show extreme reverence to women lowers you in their eyes. At first, that felt harsh, cruel even, but as I sat with it, I saw the shadow of truth in my own story. I had placed her on a pedestal, treated her like she was above mistakes, above fault. When she tested me, I backed down. When she pulled away, I leaned in harder. And in doing so, I lost the very thing she needed from me. Most, a man who could stand his ground. Schopenhauer called this the illusion of reverence. He warned that if a man makes himself small in the name of love, he may win approval, but he'll lose something much more vital, instinctive trust. There's a difference between being loving and being pliable, and I was pliable. I mistook flexibility for virtue. I thought sacrificing my needs was noble. But Stoicism doesn't teach that. Stoicism teaches strength with boundaries. It teaches that true love can't exist where there is no self-respect, because a man who cannot say no is not dependable. He's disposable. A friend of mine, Aaron, said something that hit me hard. We were having beers one night and I opened up about everything. He listened quietly, then said, maybe you weren't too soft. Maybe you just forgot to be steel under that softness. I laughed, but he was right. I had all the warmth, none of the edge, and somewhere along the way that made me easy to walk away from. I started to notice patterns in others too. Men I knew who were always bending over backward, always checking in, always trying to be the perfect boyfriend. They all shared one thing in common. They got left behind, because no matter how many candles they lit or how many poems they wrote, they forgot something vital. You can't inspire devotion if you've given up your dignity. And so I started making changes. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. I stopped apologizing for taking space, stopped over-explaining my emotions, stopped trying to be the cure for someone else's emptiness, because I was finally starting to understand that strength isn't found in silence or withdrawal. It's found in balance, in being kind but not compliant, in being loving but not desperate, in being steady, not stagnant. I remember writing something in my journal that night. A man who sacrifices everything for peace will one day be blamed for having no edge. It felt true and painful because I saw myself in it. But pain as Stoicism teaches is a teacher, and I was finally ready to learn. So now when I think back to the man I was, the man who never said no, who never stood up for his own needs, I don't hate him. I feel for him. He was doing what he thought would keep love alive. But now I know love built on fear of conflict isn't love. It's compliance, and that's not what she needed, and it's not what I needed either. This is the part of the journey where the nice guy dies. Not because kindness is wrong, but because kindness without strength isn't noble. It's naive. Schopenhauer wasn't asking us to become cruel. He was asking us to wake up, to stop pretending that blind devotion is virtue, and to remember that the kind of man who commands love isn't the one who gives everything away. It's the one who holds something back. The one who respects himself enough to be unmoved by flattery, unshaken by rejection, and unafraid to walk alone. So no, I'm not trying to become cold. I'm trying to become whole, because if I can't stand tall in my own presence, I'll always shrink in someone else's. And that's not who I want to be anymore. You ever look back at a memory and realize it was never what you thought it was? That the smile wasn't affection, the silence wasn't peace, the compliment wasn't truth. It was camouflage. That's what started happening to me. Not all at once, but slowly, like fog lifting off a field, revealing all the wreckage beneath. After diving into Stoicism, I started doing something I'd never done before. I stopped trying to understand her and started trying to understand reality. Not what I wanted it to be, not what I hoped it could become, just what was. And the truth, as harsh as it felt at first, was that I had built our relationship on a foundation of illusions. Not because she lied, but because I chose not to see. When I rewatched a video of her from a year ago laughing at one of my jokes, I saw something I missed the first time. She wasn't really laughing. She was tolerating that half-second glance at the camera, the shift in posture, the smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I had convinced myself she adored me. But now, with my eyes wide open, I saw it clearly. She was already pulling away. She had just learned how to smile while doing it. And here's where Schopenhauer's words rang in my ears again. Dissimulation is innate in woman. A woman who is perfectly truthful is perhaps an impossibility. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not quoting him to accuse or condemn. I don't think he meant women are evil or scheming. What he meant is that nature wired women differently, not for confrontation, but for subtlety, for survival, for strategic influence. Men tend to move in straight line. Women navigate through currents. Once I started seeing it, I couldn't unsee it. The way she changed her tone around certain people, the selective vulnerability, the compliments that always followed my accomplishments, but disappeared when I was struggling. I used to think she was just busy, distracted, overwhelmed. But now I saw it for what it was. She was testing, measuring, watching. If I would bend or stand, and I bent every time. There's a brutal line from Schopenhauer that hit me in the gut. A man strives for direct mastery over things. A woman is driven to indirect mastery through a man. When I read that, something cracked inside me, because I had thought I was leading, holding things together, building a life. But in reality, I was being steered. Not with orders, not with demands, but with silence, with tears, with subtle shifts that made me think I was choosing, when in truth I was reacting. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me still. For the first time I saw that I hadn't been betrayed, I had simply been blind. I had chosen the comfort of illusion over the pain of clarity. And that's not her fault, that's mine. There's a journal entry I wrote around that time. I keep going back to it. It said, "She didn't deceive me, I deceived myself. She was just the mirror that showed me what I didn't want to admit, that I thought love could be earned by self-erasure." And that's when the Stoic teaching finally sank in. Not in my head, but in my bones. That freedom isn't found in controlling others, It's found in controlling the need to be seen, to be chosen, to be held. Because the more you chase validation, the more you abandon yourself. In the weeks that followed, I started clearing out my apartment. Not just physical stuff, but emotional clutter. I deleted old texts, burned old letters, even threw out a few framed photos, ones that used to feel sacred. But the hardest part, I pulled out a little box from the closet. Inside it was a necklace I gave her on our second anniversary. It had her initials engraved on the back. She said it made her feel safe, like she was mine. But after she left, I found it tucked inside a kitchen drawer near the garbage bags, like it had never meant anything at all. I held it in my hand that night, and for a moment I felt that old wave rising, grief, anger, the urge to ask why. But then I heard something else, that voice inside me, calm, grounded, stoic. It whispered, "This too is just matter. It only has power if you give it meaning." And I didn't. I walked to the balcony and let it fall into the city night. Not as a gesture of rage, but as a ritual of release. I didn't need a symbol of who I was. I was becoming someone new. The next morning I stood in front of the mirror. Same face, same eyes. But something felt different, not tougher, not colder, just clearer. Like I had stopped looking for permission to be myself. That's the strange gift pain gives you if you let it. It strips away the fantasies, and if you don't run from it, if you sit in it, feel it, breathe through it, it leaves behind something clean. Not happy, but whole. I don't blame her anymore. She was just being who she is, and I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. Someone endlessly available, endlessly giving, endlessly forgiving. Because I thought that would make me lovable. But now I know, if love costs you your self-respect, it's not love, it's dependency, and I'm done being dependent. From now on, I choose to see clearly, to feel everything but need nothing. Because that's what Stoicism really is. Not emotional detachment, but emotional discipline. And for the first time in a long time, I feel free. They say the best way to solidify what you've learned is to teach it, but what they don't tell you is how exposed it makes you feel when you're not living it yourself. That's where I found myself standing in front of my younger cousin Jake, trying to give him wisdom I hadn't fully earned. Jake's 23, still bright-eyed, still hopeful. He called me out of the blue one night, voice tight with frustration. "She ghosted me," he said. "After everything I did, I wrote her poetry, bought her gifts, even helped her study for her boards. Then one day, nothing." I sat in silence for a moment, letting the words settle. I knew that pain, not just the heartbreak, but the humiliation. That silent, invisible rejection that leaves you questioning your worth. I met up with him the next day. We grabbed coffee at a quiet place near the park. Jake looked like I did months ago, searching for answers in a world that doesn't explain itself. He asked, "What did I do wrong?" And I gave him the best stoic advice I could. "Jake, you didn't do anything wrong by caring, but maybe you forgot to care for the one person who matters most, you." He blinked at me, clearly trying to process it. "You mean I shouldn't have tried so hard?" "No," I said. "I mean you should have tried harder not to lose yourself in the process." He nodded like he understood, but then he paused and looked me dead in the eye. "Then why are you still checking your ex's profile every night?" The words hit me like a brick. I didn't answer. Because he was right. I had told myself I was over it, that I had moved on. I'd burned the letters, tossed the necklace, quoted the Stoics in my journal like a monk with Wi-Fi. But deep down, part of me still hadn't let go. Part of me still wanted her to regret leaving. Still wanted that silent, imagined vindication. Her scrolling through my profile and seeing how well I'm doing. Stoicism in theory is easy stoicism in practice. That's a whole different beast. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Jake's question in my mind like a loop I couldn't turn off. Why was I still checking? What did I think I'd find? An apology, a sign of weakness, some poetic proof that she missed me? No. What I wanted was control. And that's exactly what Stoicism warns us about. Trying to control what doesn't belong to us is the root of suffering. I'd read that a dozen times. I'd said it out loud to Jake, but I hadn't lived it, not fully. I opened my laptop and stared at her profile one last time. The photos, the captions, the curated version of her life that no longer included me. And I realized something I was addicted to, the illusion of significance. Not because I wanted her back, but because I hadn't yet replaced her presence with something stronger. I had removed the external, but not rebuilt the internal. And that was the lesson I needed most. The next morning, I started a new journal entry with a simple line: "A man cannot teach what he refuses to embody." It was time to stop being a philosopher on paper and start becoming one in practice. I called Jake later that day, told him he was right, told him I was still wrestling with the same demon he was, attachment not to her specifically, but to how she made me feel when she wanted me. Validation is a hell of a drug, but like any drug, it fades fast and leaves you hollow. We talked for an hour, not like teacher and student, but like two men trying to walk the same uphill road. Jake said something that surprised me. I think she liked me more when I was busy, before I started chasing. That stopped me because it echoed something I'd felt but never said out loud. When you give yourself away too easily, people stop seeing you as a prize. They see you as a fallback, a cushion, a certainty, and certainty rarely breeds attraction. I told him, "You've got to become a mountain Jake. Something unshakable, something people admire from a distance, even if they can't reach the peak." He smiled. "Is that a Stoic thing?" I nodded. "It's the only thing." That night, I made a promise to myself. No more almost Stoicism, no more reading without embodying, no more quoting without practicing. I deleted her profile, blocked the apps, cleared the tabs. I kept open like digital shrines to the past. It wasn't out of bitterness, it was out of discipline. Because that's what Stoicism is. Not coldness, not detachment, but the art of choosing what and whom you allow to shape your inner world. I started changing little things. I woke up earlier, trained harder, ate cleaner, started reading physical books again instead of scrolling for motivation. And more importantly, I stopped checking, not just on her, but on what she thought, what she might think, because her opinion no longer had a lease inside my mind. And here's the beautiful part. As I let go of that mental space, new things began to grow. Ideas, creativity, direction. I began sketching designs for a side project I'd shelved for years. It began feeling alive again. Not because I was over her, but because I was finally choosing me. Stoicism doesn't promise peace through escape. It offers strength through exposure and facing my own contradictions, that gap between what I taught Jake and what I lived in myself. That was my exposure, that was my test. But now I was ready to pass it. And as I walked forward, I didn't need closure, I didn't need vindication. I only needed one thing: to no longer betray myself in the name of love. I didn't expect to see her again. Not after everything. Not after months of silence, but life has a strange sense of timing, and maybe the universe knows exactly when to test the strength you claim to have gained. It was a Wednesday, the kind of ordinary day that Stoics say is perfect for practice, because it's in the ordinary that you discover whether you've truly changed or just decorated your pain with prettier words. I was leaving the gym, sweat still drying on my skin, when I saw her. She was standing by the cafe across the street, arms folded, scanning the sidewalk like she was waiting for someone. Our eyes met, and just like that, time folded in on itself. I could have ignored her to walk the other way, pretended not to notice, but that wouldn't have been strength. That would have been fear, so I crossed the street and said her name. She turned, smiled faintly, and said, "Hey," just like that, like we hadn't torn each other apart in silence. We grabbed coffee, sat down at a table outside, the breeze folding between us like a buffer of polite distance. She looked different, not drastically, but just enough to remind me that time had passed and we were no longer who we were. She asked how I was. I said I was better, not out of pride, not as a front, just truth. I was better. The conversation was casual at first. Surface level work, hobbies, mutual friends. But then, as if pulled by gravity, we drifted into deeper waters. She said, "You seem different." I looked at her, calm and steady. "Yeah." She hesitated, then leaned in slightly. "I've been meaning to reach out. Just didn't know if you'd want to talk." I took a breath, let the silence stretch before answering. I didn't think about whether I wanted to or not. I just let the silence stay until it taught me what it needed to. She nodded, looked down at her cup, fidgeted with the lid. That's when she said it. The thing I never expected. I know this sounds crazy, but the guy I told you about, the one I connected with after us, he wasn't real. I blinked. What do you mean? She looked embarrassed, almost ashamed. It was this AI relationship app. It builds these personalities, listens to your voice notes, tailors replies to match your mood. I thought it was just a distraction, but I got hooked. My mind went quiet. No anger, no judgment, just stillness. She continued, it wasn't even about him. It was about how easy it felt. No conflict, no miscommunication, just this endless stream of validation. She looked up, eyes glossy. I didn't leave you for someone else. I left because I was tired of struggling, tired of working through stuff. With you, I felt like I had to show up with him. I didn't. And there it was, the test not of forgiveness, but of presence, of composure, of sovereignty. I didn't flinch, didn't rush to defend myself, didn't ask why I wasn't enough. I just sat there grounded in a body that had once been a battlefield and was now something closer to peace. I nodded. Slowly, I get it, I said. It's easier to be admired by something that doesn't ask anything of you. She exhaled like she'd been holding that weight for months. I didn't come to explain. She said, I just wanted to say it. I smiled just a little. I'm glad you did. That's the thing, no one tells you about growth. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just lets you sit in a moment that once would have destroyed you and feel nothing but grace. I wasn't numb, I was free. She reached for her purse, clearly ready to leave. Before she stood, she looked at me again. I hope you're okay. I am, I said. I remembered who I was before I thought I needed anyone. She gave a small, bittersweet smile and walked away. I watched her go, but not with longing. With quiet respect, not for her, but for the man I had finally become. That night, I wrote in my journal, control is not suppression. Control is peace under pressure, power without noise, strength without armor. That coffee shop conversation didn't give me closure. It gave me confirmation that the work I'd done in silence was real, that the emotional strength I had whispered into myself night after night had solidified, and no ghost, no app, no former lover could take that from me. You see, pain doesn't leave cleanly, it leaves residue, scars, triggers, but it also leaves proof. Proof that you endured, that you evolved, that you faced the fire and didn't become ash. You became steel. She had found comfort in something programmed to mirror her needs, and I had found discipline in something designed to challenge mine myself. Schopenhauer might have smiled at the irony, because it wasn't a stronger man that replaced me, it was a stronger illusion, and yet, I didn't lose because in losing her, I found something better, my sovereignty. A woman once left me for ease, but now I live with depth. A man once begged for closure, but now I walk in composure because what Stoicism gave me wasn't a shield, it was a compass, and I will never again wander off course to be loved by someone else. It's strange how the pain that once controlled you eventually becomes quiet. Not gone, not forgotten, but still like the surface of a deep lake that no longer ripples from the storm. That's where I find myself now. Not invincible, just rooted. It's been almost a year since she left, since the day the version of me I thought was strong got exposed for what it really was. Fragile, dependent, reactive. But I don't resent that version of me. He needed to fall apart, because if he hadn't, I would have never found this man, the one I am now. Most mornings I wake up early, not because I have to, but because I want to. There's a certain clarity that only comes before the rest of the world starts making noise. I'll sit on the balcony with my coffee, let the wind pass over my skin, and just breathe. No scrolling, no validation, chasing, just stillness, just presence. I started journaling again consistently this time, not to process heartbreak, but to preserve clarity. Sometimes I write about what I've learned, other times I write letters I'll never send. One of them started like this. Thank you for leaving. You didn't break me, you revealed me. And it's true, what I thought was abandonment was actually awakening. The fire didn't burn me down. It burned away everything that wasn't real. I've rebuilt my life not to show anyone, but to finally feel aligned with myself. New routines, new challenges, new standards. I started my own business, not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I wanted to build something unshakable. Every client I work with, every decision I make, it all runs through one filter. Does this serve my higher self, or does it serve my ego? That filter has changed everything. Even my friendships have evolved. I don't entertain surface-level conversations anymore. If a connection doesn't challenge me, expand me, or hold me accountable, it quietly falls away. I used to be afraid of being alone. Now, I guard my solitude like sacred ground, because solitude is where I recalibrate, where I remember, where I choose who I am every single day. Jake's doing better too. Funny how mentoring him ended up saving me just as much. He's now journaling, lifting, dating, but this time with boundaries. We check in every week, but we don't talk about our exes anymore. We talk about standards, self-respect, direction. I told him something last week that felt like a full circle moment. She was the test. This is the transformation. He nodded. And the test was never about her, was it? No, I said. It was about who we'd become in the aftermath. A few weeks ago, I went back to the place where I'd proposed to her. Not out of nostalgia, out of sovereignty. I wanted to see if the memory still held power over me. It didn't. I stood there in the same spot, watching couples pass by, laughter floating through the evening air. And I felt nothing but calm. No longing, no pain. Just a quiet nod to a past chapter that no longer owns the pen. That night, I lit a candle on my desk and wrote one final page in the chapter that started it all. This is not a story of heartbreak. This is a story of rebirth. A man who mistook comfort for love and pain for punishment until he realized that the fire wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The old me used to chase love like it was oxygen. Used to shrink himself to fit the frame someone else was painting. Used to believe that worthiness had to be earned through suffering. Now I don't chase, I attract by being grounded in who I am. I don't shrink, I expand by letting my presence set the tone, and I don't suffer to earn love. I endure so I can love with strength, not scarcity. That's the gift of Stoicism. Not numbness, but the ability to feel deeply without being ruled by what you feel, to remain open without becoming exposed to love, without losing yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." She was the impediment. My need for her, the illusion, the heartbreak, it all stood in my way, but it became the way. The fire that burned me was the same fire that forged me. And what emerged from the flames wasn't a bitter man. It was a sovereign one. I don't need revenge. I don't need recognition. I don't even need resolution. Because I have something far more powerful, peace. And that peace isn't silent. It's strong. It's radiant. It's the quiet, unshakable flame that says, I am no longer defined by what left. I am defined by what stayed and what I chose to become.